Thank you, Ron. As always, pleasure. Next up, I want to ask Marty to say a few words. Try to be a little more economical than Ron, please. Hold on. This man deserves a proper introduction. Okay? He is a legend on wheels. Okay, a legend on wheels. He just got back from several weeks in Rwanda, doing various work, political, legal, and visiting his granddaughter. Marty we met like 5 years ago. We've become fast friends. I can't even keep up with him. He's awesome. Go, Marty.
Back in 1993, I knew Steve as a lawyer. Back in 1993, I knew Steve as a lawyer who had represented people at Rikers Island and then wrote a book about it. So he's already established in the New York scene as someone who had an extraordinary commitment. And then in 1993, he went to Ecuador. And what he saw in Ecuador changed his life. And what he saw in Ecuador in those few days lead to today. If you walk around Ecuador and you saw Chevron's destruction, and you saw the children killed, and you saw the environment destroyed, and you recognize you're trying to fight against a company that has millions and millions of dollars and is totally determined to squash you. But when Steve saw that, he understood that he had little option, that this made him do something that was going to define himself for the rest of his life. And for the rest of his life, whatever he saw there stays with him today. I'm going to just be brief but a little serious if I can. There was a wonderful poet, Anna Akhmatova, and there's a poet called Requiem. And she's standing outside a prison in Stalin's times, and hundreds of people are lined up. Their sons, their husbands are all in this prison. And all they can do is stand there, and they stand there in order to let the government know that someone cares about these people. That's all. That's the only way they can indicate anything. And they stand there for years, and the lines are 200, 300 people long, and they just stand there, and their reward is getting up there. And then on the line, a lady turns to the person who turns out to be this poet, and the woman says to Akhmatova, "Can you describe this?" And Akhmatova says, "Yes." And then the next line is, "A smile crossed what once had been her face." And that poem went throughout the world and had an echo. And Steve did the same thing. And what Steve learned from people like Havel, from people like Mandela, is that you do something if you think it's right. And you don't ask the question, what's going to happen tomorrow? You know that if you do something right, and you can get other people to be motivated by that, you don't have to waste your time in predicting what you can't predict in any event. I knew Havel after jail, I knew Mandela before jail. Steve has many, many of those qualities. He saw something, he was moved, and that's why we here are 29 years later. Congratulations to Steve and to all of you for supporting him.
Thank you, Marty. You know, part of this journey was I had to go to federal prison for 45 days. And Judge Preska, who presided over my contempt case, she's connected to Chevron because she's a leader of the Federalist Society. And Chevron's a major funder of the Federalist Society. And her legal basis, her legal theory about me was that I should stay in my 7th floor apartment up there. We had many rallies here, and I spoke from my apartment because I couldn't come down to the street. Because she thought I was a risk of flight, that I was going to actually facing a misdemeanor, the smallest possible offense in the federal system, that I was going to abandon my family, my wife and my son, and flee the country and become an international fugitive where I would face a 20-year sentence if I were to get caught. That was her theory. After I had never missed a single court date in any case in my life, and in 28 years of practicing law, I didn't have one single grievance filed against me by any client. Okay. I'm a risk of flight. It was all a plan by Chevron and their judicial allies to keep me locked up so I could not do my human rights work and could not advocate. And when I was in prison, the prison was locked down because of COVID, for the most part. We barely got out of our units. It was a low security prison, but the conditions were more like a high security penitentiary. Marty was one of the few people who managed to work his way into the prison. And I'll never forget that day when you came to visit me. You know, I tried to look as sharp as I possibly could. They give you khaki shirt, khaki pants, boots. You know, for a visit, you get it all ironed, and you try to look sharp in the context of an institution that tries to totally strip you of your identity. In any event, I was so nervous about that visit. More nervous because, like, what are these people going to think when they see me in, like, these prison khakis after seeing me like this for so many years? And Marty got in. They tried to keep him out, by the way, which he hasn't even experienced in the most repressive societies in the world when he's gone to visit prisoners. And he came in and he gave me a kiss on the forehead. Appreciate that, sir.
I went to see Steve at the prison, and I got there at about 9 in the morning, and I said, I'm here to see Steve Donziger. And they said, okay. They kept me until about 10 o'clock. Then at 10 o'clock, they said, you can't find him. I said, what do you mean you can't find him? This is Danbury up in Connecticut. They said, we can't find him. I said, I'll stay for another hour. I stayed another hour. They said, we can't find him, and the time to let you in has ended, so you have to go home. And then I got into a car, drove about half an hour, and a police car came up, stopped me, and told me they found him. They found him 3 hours later in this tiny prison.
Next, I want to introduce someone I met about a year ago online, and we became friends. Many know her as really one of the most extraordinary actors and artists of our generation. I've had the privilege of getting to know her as a friend, as a humanitarian, as an activist, as a mom, as a really cool woman. So I want to introduce my friend Susan Sarandon.
We did meet online. He's the only person I have met online, I'd like to say. It sounds a lot sexier than actually how it turned out. We didn't swipe, we just talked. And like everyone else, when I heard this story, I just couldn't believe. I kept thinking there must be something that I don't know that would explain this miscarriage of justice, that somebody for representing the voiceless in the Amazon after the greedy Chevron had dumped on purpose all this toxic waste, killing indigenous people, poisoning their water still to this day. How possibly could they be, because of a laptop and a phone that was refused to be turned over, how could 993 days of house arrest with a bracelet around your leg and losing your means of support, your job, your license, all of these things, I was like, seriously, there's got to be something else. And that, in fact, is what everybody said to me when I started to talk about this and post things online, because as you can expect, there was a complete blackout in terms of mainstream media. I see a lot of friendly faces here of people who've tried to get out the word over this period of time, sources of independent journalists that have interviewed Steven, interviewed me, Marianne Williamson, anything that we could try to get people, not only for Steven's sake, but because of what it means to our democracy, to our system of justice, to our environment, and what it means in the future for any lawyer or activist who tries to speak for the voiceless. You know, we're all not using plastic straws, and meanwhile, Chevron is dumping and has had absolutely no accountability. So today is a joyful, joyful day because finally Steven's out. I don't know what he's going to do. I know that when I first got my first cordless phone, I kept standing next to the phone the exact length of what the cord was for at least a couple weeks because it took me a while to reprogram myself. So I don't know, Steven. We've got to keep an eye on him, how he's going to deal with all this freedom all of a sudden. Put a bell on you or something. But I want to thank everyone that's here, and I also want to say, as everyone else has said, this is just the beginning of the next phase, because we have to make sure that this story doesn't go away. This was a godsend in some ways, and of course, Steven's family and Steven paid the price, but it did make this conversation possible in the most dramatic way, and we have to keep that conversation going, because we know that the attention span of news is very short, and we're not going to get very much help from mainstream anything. And what we have to work towards is now, you know, protecting Steven and his family, and also making sure that this doesn't disappear and that Chevron has to pay something. You know, it's clear. I mean, it couldn't be more dramatic what's happening to those people. And this is just one example of people that have been taken advantage of and whose land has been raped and pillaged and poisoned, and it has to stop. And so this has been a test case of how everyone responds, how we fight it, how we reach out to each other. And this is a wonderful community right here, and I want to thank you all for being part of that community. I want to thank Steven for inspiring us all to do the right thing when we can. And you know, a lot of these cases start with smaller people who are, I forget the name of the woman who now is facing 8 years in jail for...
Jessica Resnicek.
Yeah, that's a big, big chance that she took. But in our own way, whether it means talking to your neighbors, talking to your kids, encouraging them to understand that it's not over, no matter what this administration does in terms of fracking and everything else, that we have to keep holding on with the belief that community is stronger. It's not going to come from the top. It never has, and it definitely isn't going to come now. So it's going to be up to us, and you all have shown up, and there's power in showing up. That's about, I mean, that's what I'd like on my grave, except I'm not going to have a grave, but anyway. I'm just going to, you know, be cremated or something. But anyway, if I had a grave stone, then I would just like to see she showed up. And like, thank all of you for doing the same.
Thank you, Susan Sarandon. We have several more very interesting speakers, and we're going to go through them one by one, including Professor Nesson and my friend Jason and Katie Halper and so many people. And my wife, Laura Miller, is going to speak. And Giada. Next, I want to introduce a very, very, very special guest. Someone who I think has already changed and has the potential to really make a radical paradigmatic shift in this country through his leadership and the leadership of his many colleagues with whom he works. The man who helped win probably the most significant labor organizing movement in recent history, Mr. Christian Small. Actually, one thing, you're probably wondering how we know each other. We actually met about a week or two ago. A mutual friend brought Chris over, And we literally sat there for 3 hours exchanging stories about our respective campaigns, and it was really an extraordinary night. And thank you. I'm honored to be your friend, Chris.
Thank you.
Sure, you all win, right? Hey, there's a couple of Amazons we gotta take down. So you started it off. I'm gonna finish it. Yeah, thank you all for coming to this space today, and I'm glad to share this. You know, getting away from the campaign for a couple of hours while we're making history as we speak over there in Staten Island. Yeah. As Steve mentioned, yeah, we met just a few weeks ago. It's been a whirlwind of events, as you can imagine. April 1st, when we made history, you know, everybody and their mother's been calling our phones, and it's been crazy. I've been trying to do media, trying to be organizing, trying to take care of my kids, and trying to have a little bit of a social life. So it's just great to finally get away from a bus stop, because I was at a bus stop for about a year, and to be here and share this space and share this experience with the community and with the world, that's what the labor movement needed, and that's what I think we all needed as community. So, you know, this is a moment and a window of opportunity for everybody. You know, the pandemic was not just life or death. It was really a higher power saying that the world needs to stop and people need to pay attention. And you had a choice to make. If you go back to what you think was normal beforehand, you're pretty much just meeting your fate, your ends meet. You're not living for a purpose. And when you think about the pandemic that happened in 2020, the world stopped. You had a moment right there to make a decision. What am I going to do for my future, for my children? And when Amazon fired me, it was a no-brainer. I had nothing else to lose. I just lost everything. I lost my health care. I lost my income, my main source of income. And it's the middle of a pandemic. I'm not getting hired anywhere. And I got fired on TV. So who the hell was hiring me? I'm the whistleblower. And I said, you know what? You know what? Fuck it, I'm unemployed. So I took that moment and I said, you know what? I don't want my kids to grow up and go through this. And Jeff Bezos made that, he even signed off on this smear, you know, calling me not smart or articulate, ironically to make me the face of the whole unionizing efforts. I said, okay, noted. That noted, you know, and then I met my brothers and sisters, my brothers who I actually work with, they directly work underneath me, Derek Palmer, Jordan Flowers, Gerald Bryson, who got his job back 2 years later. Just got his job back. That's what organizing do. It gets your job back. So my brothers and I, we traveled the country. We started here in New York at Jeff Bezos' $196 million mansion, or 96, whatever it's worth. We know how much. And we traveled the country, went from the East Coast to the West Coast to Seattle, and we advocated for workers' rights. We included different movements, the Extinction Rebellion. We included the Our Revolutions, the Black Lives Matter, the climate issues. We included everybody. We called ourselves the Congress of Essential Workers, TCOEW. And when I traveled the country, I noticed one thing. I only been organizing for 2 years, y'all. As you can see, I'm still learning. Traveling the country, and I'm realizing one thing. And I know it's going to hurt to say this, but when I realized this, it wasn't really as much solidarity as I thought it was. It's just plain and simple. It was divided. No matter what state I was in, what city, what town, trying to get people out for a cause that I thought was important was a struggle. I can tell you now, some of my rallies, I probably had about 10 people there. And it's true. And I have no shame in that. My team knows how I am. I said, if we're going to rally on that day, we're going to do it. We don't give a damn who shows up. And we did that. So when I realized how divided the country was and how these movements are divided, I realized the bigger picture. That's what they want us to be. That's what the billionaires want us to be, divided. They're reaping our benefits. They're reaping our labor. They're destroying our lives. They're killing us. They're firing us. They're destroying the Amazon, the real Amazon. They're building more Amazons. You know, that's what we saw. And they increased their profits. But, fast forward to now. Because guess what? Right now, we in the revolution. You said it again. Right now, we in the revolution. Everybody here is a part of that revolution, right? Look around. It's your whole community here. Every culture's here, ethnicity, backgrounds here, right here, in this one street for him. And y'all know, if y'all see the community here, y'all see the power of people when they come together, we shut shit down. Nothing they can do when we come together. And when I brought ordinary workers from Amazon, from different parts of the country, from Arizona, from Florida, from New Jersey, from California, they came to New York to organize in Staten Island, we realized Amazon can't beat us, no way, no amount of money, no amount of union busters, no amount of millions of dollars y'all spend on consulting firms. You cannot beat the power of the people. And we voted democratically. And people can say, oh, it was a fair election. It wasn't fair. We had to defeat so many odds. Y'all gonna have to wait for the documentary. But I'm telling you now, this shit was crazy. Crazy. But we won. We won by 500 plus, and y'all all witnessed that. There's no taking that back. So they can have their 25 objections of bullshit, because it's all fabricated. I don't know what they suing the government, the NLRB interfered. They said it was a low turnout. Y'all ain't complaining about Bessemer, but it's a low turnout now, because y'all lost. Yeah. Take the L, and guess what? This Friday, April 29th, 2 dubs was. I'm telling y'all right now. We gonna win. Again. And not just again, we gonna win again, the day after that, next year, forever. Because this is the revolution. And if we don't get it, 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 one more time, we don't get it. Shut it down. Power to the people, y'all.
Wow, Chris, thank you so much for coming. And I just want to say, when Chris said we won in a union election that was rigged by the company, they won anyway. And it sort of resonated with me because the people of Ecuador, the indigenous people of Ecuador won. Okay? In a trial process that was structured to favor the wealthier corporation, and they won anyway. We won, okay? And I just want to point out, no matter what they try to do to me with my detention, there is a judgment out of the courts of Ecuador where Chevron insisted the trial be held for $9.5 billion against Chevron that Chevron refuses to pay, and they are going to pay that judgment. If the gods and neutral courts have anything to do with it, okay? And I want to just also say that that judgment was affirmed by 6 different appellate courts, 28 appellate judges, and they want to focus totally on me, and we're going to take the focus right back to the people of Ecuador that Chevron is poison, and we're going to talk about it at the end. But first I want to introduce a very special guest, waiting patiently, Professor Charlie Nesson. Charlie, can you come up here, please? This is a crazy story, okay? First of all, thank you for coming.
Pleasure.
When I was in law school a long time ago, okay, Professor Nesson taught me evidence in law school. We didn't know each other personally then. He was my professor. I was a pretty mediocre student, to be frank. A few years ago, we became reacquainted through this case. Charlie invited me to speak to his class on a couple of occasions up at Harvard, and he has dug into this and represented me, along with other lawyers, on a number of matters that are just critical to the well-being of me and my family and the people of Ecuador, and I'm so deeply appreciative, and thank you for coming.
A pleasure. Thank you very much, Stephen. Really. I am following a man who has stood up and spoken of power to the people. My focus as a teacher is on the American jury. And Stephen's case stands in my mind as the case of the century with respect to no trial by jury, even though the state was free and easy taking his liberty. Jury is the expression in our Constitution of the power of the people. And Stephen's been denied it. I'm here to tell you that as an evidence teacher, the narrative that has taken Stephen down, that he is guilty of bribery to win the verdict for the indigenous people of the Amazon, I'm here to tell you that that is a constructed lie.
Yes.
I could go into elaborate detail as to how the leading corporate New York fancy law firm representing Chevron against indigenous people constructed the demonization program that they embarked upon that led to Judge Kaplan's finding that Steven Donziger was guilty of bribing the judge. I can tell you that that finding was based on evidence crucially given to the court by Chevron's paid witness, subsequently discredited, and even Judge Kaplan does not stand behind this finding at this point. He himself, when later Stephen came forward with impeachment, said that his judgment stood regardless of the bribery finding, and therefore he didn't need to consider the impeachment of Giada, the one witness who testified to this supposed bribe, which has no external corroboration to it whatsoever. The whole case turns on a supposed moment in a cafe in which Giada, the paid Chevron witness, testifies that he suggested to Steven that the judge would rule his way for $500,000. And Steven said no. Actually, that's Giada's testimony. And he then says, this same paid witness, that he heard from Steven's law partner later on, Fajardo, that yes, that would be a deal. And so that's it. No money ever passes hands. No external corroboration exists beyond the testimony of this one witness. And that's the basis on which Judge Kaplan convicted him in a civil proceeding without a jury of bribery.
Shame. Shame. Shame.
Charlie, what was Giada's background? What was Giada's background?
Giada was a defrocked judge in Ecuador who had become a kind of bagman and who in fact went to Chevron first, supposedly, and offered them the case for a good bribe. And then, one thing to understand, this witness was prepped by the Gibson Dunn lawyers in 52 separate sessions before he testified. So this is constructed testimony. This is testimony that's designed to take him down. And they make hay out of the fact that he didn't contest this finding on appeal. Why not? Well, again, into the mysteries of RICO, but the fact is, Donziger was not, in fact, tried for bribery. The judgment against him was not a judgment for bribery. It was this racketeering thing. And so the fact is that the bribery finding is not appealable. The judgment is appealable, not the preliminary finding. And so this whole picture of Donziger changes radically if you imagine that he didn't bribe. No, actually, Steven, did you bribe to win this verdict?
No.
There you go. There you go. There you go.
The reality is Chevron bribed this guy with $2 million to lie that I bribed somebody, and the judge believed him over me because the judge, don't get me going, no jury. I want to acknowledge for Nesson, Charlie's wife, has been a huge support for it. Thank you for coming. Now we're going to go a little faster with some quick 2-minuters from some people, and then my wife Laura is going to speak, and I'm going to speak to wrap it up. Then we're going to dance a little bit. Lindsey Boylan, who, Lindsey and I are new friends too. Lindsey is one of the courageous women who called out Governor Andrew Cuomo for some of his inappropriate behavior. We became friends over that. Lindsey.
Well, I'd like to say we also met online, and I think we bonded over the idea of evil. And I never really thought much about evil in the world because I'm a really optimistic person. But when you live in a system that has designed the entire legal process to victimize people who are just trying to help the most vulnerable just trying to save our environment, it's evil. And in fact, we have some of the same lawyers making up stuff, smearing people. Chris has faced the same thing. That is what evil is. That is what corruption is. And unfortunately, it all too often wins the day. And that's because powerful forces are so big and so confusing that we forget that they've been designed to make us fail. We forget, or we don't know, that the entire courtroom has been bought by a corporation. We forget that the richest man in the world has bought our public square today, in fact. These systems are why our environment continues to decline, because it's all smoke and mirrors. And I have to say, I've just been so inspired by everything that you've done, in part because you've given so much of yourself and so much of your family in it, and you've actually shed a light on the entire carceral system by saying you get calls at 2 a.m., showing people what actually happens, and it's deeply, deeply unjust, and it's deeply evil. So I'm just so glad you're through this, and I know we're going to win this bigger fight, people over power, people over money, because of people like you.
Thank you, Lindsey. And I just want to say that I was prosecuted not by the U.S. government. They refused to prosecute me. I was prosecuted by a private corporate law firm that had Chevron as a client. Can you imagine? Imagine! I am the first person in the history of this country prosecuted by a corporation in the name of the U.S. government. And the irony is, the lawyer, the Chevron lawyer appointed to prosecute me, Rita Glavin, is also the same lawyer that Andrew Cuomo hired to try to disparage and defame Lindsey and others who came forward with their allegations. Same person, okay? I'm not, where is she now? I don't know, she has her own law firm. Oh, I'm not sure. Yeah, okay. Aaron, get up here. And just go for a couple of minutes. Like, this guy, first of all, he's a law student who has, along with other law students, organized an organization called Law Students for Climate Accountability, which is a critically important thing. Because our big law legal profession, the Gibson Dunns, the Paul Weisses that represent Chevron, Exxon, they are being used by these oil companies to launder very unethical and illegal activities through the law to try to buy time as our planet gets destroyed. Aaron, thanks for coming. He's been a big supporter, and this group is like, they organized a boycott of the Chevron law firm that prosecuted me. I mean, it's just amazing what they've done in support of justice and climate change and me and my family. Go, brother. Thank you.
Hi there. As Steven said, I'm a soon-to-be graduating law student, and I'm here today speaking as one of the many law students I know who look to Steven Donziger as a model for the kind of lawyer we aspire to be. And I don't say that lightly. I think role models are actually really important in the legal profession. It's how the next generation of lawyers gets socialized. And in our law schools right now, the models that are foisted on us do not look like Steven Donziger, right? We are taught to celebrate law firms like Gibson Dunn and many others that serve as the indispensable right hand of the rich and powerful in this country, that are aiding and abetting corporate crimes against humanity, against indigenous communities, against the future of life on this planet. And so to see a different model for what it can mean to be a lawyer, to see attorneys like Steven who are striving to use the tools of our legal system to fight with and for frontline communities and to do battle with corporate tyrants, that can make a huge difference. And of course, if you happen to be one of those corporate tyrants, that difference represents a really unacceptable threat to your power. And that, of course, is exactly what this prosecution has always been about. right? Chevron knows that by attacking Steven, they are serving a whole bunch of their interests. They are attempting to grind out that alternative example of what the law could and should be. And they're sending a message to communities and advocates alike that taking on these vulture corporations, it's just not worth the risk and the cost. And that is an awfully intimidating message. I know when I first heard Steven's story as a 1L, as a first-year law student, I felt a pang of personal fear to see what this fossil fuel industry will do to destroy its opponents. And we can imagine a lawyer looking to Steven's persecution and thinking twice before deciding to challenge these corporations in the future. But looking around today, seeing this beautiful, joyous celebration, it is very clear that Chevron and Gibson Dunn fucked up. Right. Chevron wanted to make an example out of Steven Donziger so that when the next Amazon Chernobyl hit, all of us would be too fearful to follow in his footsteps. But by elevating a role model for us to look up to and emulate, Chevron's leaders may have done just the opposite. They may have inspired all of us and a generation of future lawyers to follow Steven in working to build a movement so powerful they can't possibly silence us all. Congratulations.
Boy, how's that for the future of the legal profession? Thank you, Aaron. I want to introduce, we got to go fast. I know, we're almost there. Katie Halper, who runs, I met Katie online. No, Katie runs the Katie Halper Show podcast. She's an independent journalist. She's a comedian. She's brilliant. She's interviewed me and promoted my situation and that of my family many times. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks so much, everyone, for coming out. Also, I feel a little conflicted being here. I'm, of course, very honored to speak, but speaking after Susan Sarandon, Martin Garbus, who is the lawyer to Nelson Mandela, Steven Donziger, Chris Smalls, who took on Amazon, it's like my self-esteem is really low right now. I feel like a real underachiever. So apologies in advance for my lacking resume. But no, I did get to meet Steven online, and one of the many women here who met Steven online. But Laura's still by his side. It's so moving. No, everyone here met him online because it was the pandemic and because he was locked up. In fact, whenever you came on my show, I was very grateful, but I was always a little tempered by the fact that it's not like you had anywhere else to go. But in all seriousness, Chevron has blood on its hands. We have to remember this, right? This is a very joyful day, and we should all be celebrating. And we also have to remember that Steven Donziger was locked up because his crime was going after Chevron and successfully suing them for poisoning indigenous people in Ecuador and their water, causing birth defects, cancer, death, and environmental destruction. And the only people who have paid for that, despite this judgment, the only people who have paid for that are people who have died, who have gotten cancer, who have been persecuted and prosecuted, like Steven Donziger. And Steven is the first one to tell you that his case pales in comparison to the losses that the people of Ecuador have gone through, and we need to remember that. And the other group of people, besides all these lawyers and judges who have blood on their hands, is the media, because the media was totally silent about this. They're complicit in this. They really do share a lot of responsibility. I can count on two hands the number of people in the media, and shout out to Status Coup, who's here tonight, shout out to Breaking Point, shout out to The Nation, shout out to The Intercept, shout out to Susan Sarandon, Marianne Williamson, people who use their voices, because there was a deafening silence, and we cannot permit that to happen. And then the third group that has blood on its hands, you see I'm being very socialist and, redistributing the guilt among many. The third group that has blood on its hands are the politicians. Where are Gillibrand? Where's Gillibrand? Where is Senator Schumer? And where is Charles? Nadler, thank you. Jerry Nadler. Sorry, Charles Rangel was my guy for. Okay, Jerry Nadler. He's not available. Okay, well, where's Jerry Nadler? This is a shame. Yeah, I know. So, and I'll wrap up by just saying, Democrats, you're supposed to pretend to be better than Republicans on this. You're supposed to pretend to care about the environment. I know you don't really, but at least like for optics' sake, just show up. Like Susan said, show up. Everyone else needs to show up because they won't, but let's make people at least go through some of the motions. And Chevron, make Chevron pay, and also exonerate this guy fully and reinstate his bar. I don't know what the legal term is, whatever. I object to his being disbarred. Okay, thank you.
It's great. I want to introduce a friend, Avery Sy, who's been coming to our rallies over the years. She's been baking cookies and putting the money into the defense fund, and she's a friend, and I really like Avery and admire her so much, and she's a child leader of the climate movement. Avery, take it away.
Hi, my name is Avery Sy, and I'm a climate activist from Brooklyn. I said it before, but I want to say it again. I'm so happy to have a hero in Steven Donziger. He is someone I can look up to because he cares about the planet, indigenous people, and what is right. He never gives up, and I won't either. This past Friday on Earth Day, I was leading the climate strike, and I brought in a bag full of climate protest signs to share with anyone who needed one. I also brought the banner I made that says Chevron poisons kids. But when I pulled it out in front of the head of my school, she got upset and told me I had to put it away. I put it away. Later, I told her that it was true that Chevron poisons kids with their massive oil spills around the world. And I told her that Chevron is helping Putin and it is fueling the war in Ukraine. She didn't care, but I know the truth. Steven stands for the truth, and so do I. The truth is Chevron is polluting the world, and people are dying. I'm going to stand up for the truth. We will not be silent. Another world is possible.
Thank you, Amy, for that great leadership. Amazing, amazing. Never cease to amaze. Giada. This is getting kind of funny because actually Giada and her husband Alexi, and myself and my wife Laura, we met online during COVID through Instagram, and we become good friends. And Giada is a force of nature who's played an instrumental role in keeping the energy in this movement. Well, I've been stuck up in that apartment, keeping connected to the various communities, the Ecuadorian immigrant community, and all sorts of people all over the city and all over the country. Giada, thank you so much. I love you for what you've done.
Thank you, Steven. You've enlightened me and my family and all my friends and community, and I don't want to cry because it's been an emotional ride. I told Steven the first day I met him that I will not leave your side, and I was going to drop my projects for a year and just work with him to build a community. And look around. Did we build a community or what? This is power to the people. And let me tell you something about what's happening. I am so excited that Steven is free to walk out of his home. I am so happy that we're going to be able to see our friends walking around New York, having lunch, whatever it is, doing marches together, protests together, actions together. But, I gotta say, but Steven is not 100% free. And that's going to be my personal message to all of you, because we need to keep by his side. Yes. He is still a prisoner of fossil fuel Chevron. I'll tell you why. His bank accounts are still frozen. His bar license is revoked. he can't travel outside the country because his passport is still confiscated. Of course, we're going to work our butts off to make sure that he gets all his rights back. Every single right back. And let me piggyback on what Avery said. So we're all aware, because this story shines a light in all the global stories that Chevron is a crime of in 31 countries. Not just in Ecuador, where people and babies are still dying from cancer. And by the way, Chevron is still profiting from the Amazon forest. 13% of the crude oil from the Amazon forest is still being profited by Chevron. And let's not get it twisted, because they are the fossil fuel criminals of the world. The number one, they are partners with Putin directly. I'll tell you why. They own 15% of the Caspian pipeline that goes from Kazakhstan to an export port in the Black Sea in Russia. They like to try and say that that's not true, that it's not their crude oil in the Caspian pipeline, but they own the pipeline. They are transporting Russian oil. They are funding the war in Ukraine directly. So when we talk about pressing global issues, this case, Steven's story, the Ecuadorian Amazon story, shines a bright, shiny light on all the other crimes around the world. And I encourage you all to look up Dr. Nan Greer's Global Destruction Report, a forensic report that highlights every single crime and every single case they are a part of in 31 countries. And let's not forget this, Gibson Dunn and Crutcher, the law firm, is the mastermind of these crimes. So they are almost worse, because they are also Amazon's lawyers, not the forest. Amazon, the online store, yep. They're the same law firm that represents the global criminals of this world. And that's it. I am done with this shit. And we are all coming out. The fight is not over. The fight is not over. We need to keep growing this movement. Spread the word. Go look at the prison letters. Go look at the t-shirts, amazing t-shirts from New York artists that collaborated to raise money for Steven tonight. That's right, James. Come over here if you want. But this is a real community, New York local community. We need this back in this city. We are so divided. We need to come back together and really grow these people's movement. We're all anti-fossil fuel, but we all need to come together and fight the big fight. Love you all. Thanks for coming.
Giada, thank you so much. She brings it every time. It's amazing. Giada, you're amazing. Thank you so much. What energy. Alexi, Giada's partner, husband, friend, thank you so much for your support. Soulmate. Okay, we're going to have, I don't know if everyone's going to get to speak. I'm sorry. I love everybody. It's just, I don't know if we're going to have the time. But I want this man, Jason Adkins, longtime friend, law school classmate. He's known me for over 30 years. Yeah, been there, the RICO trial, this trial, that trial. He's always showing up to support. Thank you. I love you.
Was this an event? Now, this is a people's trial. You guys are the jury. You've heard the witnesses. They've talked about the crime in the Amazon. They've talked about who committed the crime. They've talked a little bit about the evidence of the crime, which is over 750 pits of oil contaminating the Amazon, knowingly and intentionally, unremediated after claims of doing so. You heard witnesses about the credibility of Mr. Donziger, who was a hero by any measure. You've heard about the people he studied with in law school. You've heard about the lawyers who represented him of great esteem, who stood by him through the abuse of the criminal judicial process known in the United States as our court system, which is as flawed as any I've seen on the basis of these proceedings. And you've heard about that from credible witnesses, professors, civil lawyers, advocates, and we also heard from the future Harvard Law student talking about how they're organizing other students, modeling Steven as the lawyer they want to be, and organizing students to shut down interviews with firms like the ones that have gone after Steven, mercilessly and outside the norms of judicial proceedings. This case is really a model of anomalies, if you believe in the rule of law. If you believe there are rules that are followed and adhered to, there are 5,000 anomalies from that rule of law here. But the reality is this exposes that our system is anomalous. That is, it is not what it purports to be, and that the only person who suffered from this outrageous eco-crime are the indigenous people in Amazon and their advocates.
Thank you.
This man is a hero. I'd like to give hurrah here. Hurrah, hurrah, hurrah! And as a jury, you guys can cast your vote at the end of these proceedings.
Yes, I live here. I live here too.
Are there any police around here? Okay. Let's not get distracted. I want to introduce my wife, Laura Miller, who we've been together 18 years. And obviously, when you get hit with what we've been hit with, it creates... Are there police here? We could use a little security back here. I don't know if there are police on the edge. Xander, can you go help, please? In any event, thank you. Let's get back to business. My wife, Laura Miller, wants to say a few words. Our family, by the way, is Laura. It's me. It's our son. It's our son Matthew, who's 15 years old. So proud of you, man. Here's Laura Miller.
A little excitement. Okay, I am not a lawyer. Okay, so Okay, I am going to read something. I'm not an actress either. I can memorize things. I found this line, and it just summed up everything that I experienced over the past, well, let's just say 3 years. Let's not go beyond that. It says, if you don't walk your true path, you won't find your true people. This just sums everything up for me. I have never in my life been on such a roller coaster ride. At first, I was just in disbelief. I was frightened. I felt like I was living in a movie that just didn't have an ending. Every time I walked out of our apartment, I just wanted to scream. How could everybody be just going about their lives and we were just living in this altered existence? So instead of being an activist, I retreated. And I stayed really close to home. And I couldn't explain to my friends what was going on. It was so outrageous. They kept saying, but why? Like, that's not fair. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. And it was Steven who said to me that in order to survive this ordeal, I needed to build a community. I needed to surround myself with people who care, people who understand, and people who wanted to help. And I realized he was right. The people who have walked through our door, and there have been a lot, attended endless Zoom calls, donated to our legal fund, reached out to Matthew and I when Steven went to jail, carried me. I have never experienced such kindness. People who I know have full lives, have their own issues, took time out, whether it was legal advice, advocacy, or just checking in to see how we were doing. I found strength in all of you, and I really found strength in our building. We have an incredible community. I just want to say thank you. The people I have met, we have experienced something that I hope we don't have to experience again, but it'll never be forgotten, and these are true, long-lasting friendships, and I thank you all from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you so much. My son has the shy bug, unlike me. Is there anyone else who wants to say something? Ray, do you want to say something? Oh, Sarah Lee, get up here. Okay, I'm going to talk in a second, but Sarah Lee Whitson is a law school classmate with Jason and myself. We have such a long history. When we were in law school, our third year, we actually organized a human rights mission to Iraq to assess the impact on civilians of the U.S. bombing in the first Gulf War. She's a powerhouse lawyer, human rights activist. She's executive director of DAWN, which is Democracy in the Air, stands for Democracy in the Air World Now. It's founded by Jamal Khashoggi, the great Jamal Khashoggi. Sarah Lee, I admire you so much. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, everyone. This is so impressive and heartening and moving, and I'm so happy to be here with all of you guys. And I know that we're here praising Steven to the highest peaks, and he deserves it. But I also want to say that all of you who are here are playing such an important role in giving us energy and spirit to keep this fight on. And I want to say that the whole world is watching and seeing how the American community, the New York City community, is coming together to defend one of our own, to defend a brilliant activist who I can tell you from personal experience has never wavered over many, many decades for his commitment to justice, for his commitment to righting the wrongs. You guys know him from the Chevron saga, but I know him in a way that goes much, much, much further back. That allowed me to know from the very beginning that if Steven was involved, it was a right and just cause, and that's why I'm here today. Steven has been a remarkable hero, and amazing that he's standing with another hero who has not just inspired America and Americans and the American working people, but people around the world. I cannot overstate the importance of our being here today together to stand with Steven, to stand for the rights of Americans, because we are giving hope to people around the world. We have something very precious to preserve here. A very, very dear friend of mine today in Turkey was sentenced to life in prison for a bogus charge of attempting to overthrow the government. That is what happens if we allow companies like Chevron to infiltrate our judiciary. Today it's in Turkey, it's starting to happen here, and we have to be on high alert. Yes. There are people who are seeking to take advantage of our being asleep, of our taking for granted things that seem easier. We have to fight, and Steven is fighting to demand justice here, from actors here that we're responsible for, that we take ownership of. So I hope everyone can give themselves a round of applause for being here, for standing together, and really for serving as a role model for the whole world. I really so proud of what Steven has assembled and what Laura has assembled and what Matthew has assembled. So you guys are awesome, and we're going to keep it up.
Wow. Will, I want to introduce Will Menaker, founder of the Chapo Trap House podcast. Will Menaker! Listen, we met online, swear to God. I don't know how we actually met, but Will invited me to the podcast, and man, did everything got really elevated after that. I'm deeply appreciative. You do a great job.
Thank you. All right, everybody. I'll keep this nice and short. As Steven said, yes, we did meet online, but I'm the only one here today who actually did send him nudes. So thanks. Thanks. He wasn't interested, but I found out about his case, and man, it was compelling. To whatever extent that my podcast was able to bring some attention to Steven and his case, it will forever be an honor of my life. Like I said, I'll keep it real short. Let's start this party. Steven, I didn't want to come empty-handed. This is for you and your family. So, still celebrating with popping bottles tonight. Thanks so much, everyone who came out. That's all I got.
Man has great taste in champagne. And, okay, Ray, come here. This is the original anti-corporate labor man. Okay. Ray Rogers, he's fought Coca-Cola. I don't know how many companies he's fought through his career. Now he's taken on Chevron. Ray, take it away.
On your behalf, you've been an inspiration. We all relish that Steven the Lion is finally out of his cage. Oh boy, they're in trouble. But we also understand that there are tens of thousands of indigenous Ecuadorians confined, impoverished, and suffering in Chevron's toxic waste pit. So our job again is just beginning, as Steve said earlier. While all this is going on, the head of Chevron was paid over the last 3 years $85 million. His stock is worth over $300 million. Shame, shame, shame. But you want to know something? It even gets bigger than what's happening in Ecuador. It's what they've done to our courts. America has been built on a foundation that we rule by law, not by people and corporations. This company has destroyed the very foundation that America was built on, and we have to stop it. Now, I want to make it clear that I support Steven, but what I do is independent from what Steven has done. I want to make that clear because of what we're getting involved in. I want you to all go to the website letsbeatchevron.org. Go to letsbeatchevron.org. And what I've said to Steven and others, and I have some background to back it up, we have got a strategy. We're going to need some real support that we can force Chevron to clean up its mess, pay them $9.5 billion or $50 billion within 3 years. Okay, the strategy is there. I'm very confident that it can be done. And for those of you old enough, and I hate to say this, Susan Sarandon over there? Susan? Okay, well, Susan would know the film Norma Ray. I don't know how many ever heard of the film Norma Ray. Well, I was the person that came in and solved that problem. Beat the J.P. Stevens Company with a corporate campaign. The same type of campaign that we need to take on Chevron. Steven, you are a great friend, and Laura, you are incredible, and Matthew, you too. And I've been so happy to be able to work with this lady here, Giada. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. I'm going to say a few words. Is there anyone else? Okay, here we go.
I just want to say we're going to make a lot of billionaires nervous today.
Isn't it incredible? The guys like taking down Amazon, and like I've been fighting over the Amazon. I mean, there's something going on there. I don't know what it is. You got to think about that. So. Christopher. Oh, excuse me. Christopher Espinosa from Ecuador?
Yes,
By way of Queens, man. Part of the great Ecuadorian immigrant community here in the New York area. Chris?
Hello, everyone. So my name is Christopher Espinosa. I'm from Queens, New York. I'm Ecuadorian. Queens has one of the biggest Ecuadorian populations in the country. And Steven, I was there in Washington when we had the press conference. I was there outside of downtown Manhattan. We had actions in Queens as well. And something that I really want to stress today is that there is a fierce urgency of a now. There is a fierce urgency for social justice. There is a fierce urgency for environmental justice. There is a fierce urgency in continuing to pass legislation to protect our communities. But the challenge continues to be that we still have big corporations that violate laws in our country, that violate laws all across the globe, and they need to be held accountable. What Chevron did to Ecuador is an atrocity. What Chevron did in Ecuador is an atrocity. They need to be held accountable. They owe money, billions of dollars, to the people in the Amazons. People died, people continue to suffer, and pollution is still a major issue. And the work that Steven does, the work that Chris Smalls has done, they are heroes because they continue to inspire the next generation of a movement that holds these big corporations accountable. Whether it is Chevron, whether it is Amazon, we still need to continue to do this work. So thank you all so much. Really appreciate it and appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, Chris, thank you so much. It makes me, of course, think of all the people down in Ecuador. It's crazy. I can't even believe this, but I've traveled to Ecuador over 250 times from New York. In the course of 20 plus years, trying to help move this case along, I feel like it's a second home. I meet Ecuadorians all over the city, all over the place. It's just an extraordinary bond that we have. And, it really reminds me how much we need to focus now, shift gears a little bit, focus on the people of Ecuador who have sat there for my 993 days of detention, still with no relief from the world's worst oil poisoning in history. It's called the Amazon Chernobyl. For those who don't know, Chevron deliberately, through its predecessor company, Texaco, deliberately, they made this decision to dump billions of gallons of cancer-causing toxic oil waste into rivers and streams that the indigenous peoples had used for millennia for their drinking water, for their bathing, and for their fishing. That's the fundamental, in my opinion, environmental crime that this company committed. And their attacks on me are tricky, right? We need to protect me, and God, I need protection. Okay, not just up to this point, but going forward. But I'm also being used by them as a weapon of mass distraction. Okay, they don't want people to think about the crimes they committed in Ecuador. They want people to think about Steve Donziger. This is not my case. I'm a lawyer on this case. Okay, this is a case owned by the indigenous peoples of the Amazon of Ecuador and the rural farmer communities who united in a class to win a major, probably the most epic legal environmental case in history. It is not the Steve Donziger case. Not the Steve Donziger case. But it is connected, isn't it? Because to the extent I can be protected, they're protected. They're attacking me to attack the people of Ecuador and undermine the money that Chevron owes to them for the mass industrial poisoning that occurred over a 25-year period, like the mid-'60s to the early '90s, and it's all still out there. So let's be very clear about that. I do need help going forward, because I am still, as Giada pointed out, in some peril. I mean, it's sort of unclear to me exactly how much, but we have to be prepared because these people at Gibson Dunn are capable of really anything. I mean, they've shown their true colors. So we have to be prepared for that. We have to be prepared to keep pressing President Biden for a pardon of me. People say, why are you seeking a pardon if you did nothing wrong? Well, I'll tell you why I'm seeking a pardon. Because the legal system here in New York, as far as my case is concerned, is dysfunctional. It is broken down. There's nowhere to go anymore. All the judges are united in backing these non-jury trials that are based on this constructed lie, as Professor Nesson pointed out. And we cannot, as Sarah Lee said, accept living in a country where human rights lawyers get locked up. What is going on? I mean, people say, would you do it over again if you knew this would happen? I mean, who the hell could imagine this kind of thing happening? Okay? Who the heck, when you calculate out getting involved in a case. As a lawyer, you're going to get locked up? Okay? That can't happen. We must all work together to ensure that this never happens again. And not only that it never happens again, that this bogus criminal contempt conviction that put me upstairs for almost 3 years gets erased by a president who needs to walk the walk on climate. Okay? We cannot let President Biden make all these fancy campaign promises about climate and then allow massive drilling on public lands and allow a human rights lawyer who's a frontline defender to be locked up in his own country. We can't let that happen. So,
Sanction Chevron Biden! Woo!
I'm trying to figure out how to end this.
Just started! We got the rebel band.
Start music. No. Anyway, I guess we'll end it, or I'll end it by just again expressing my deepest heartfelt sentiments to every single one of y'all, everyone around the world who's joined our community. We have created a community out of this. Chevron started this trying to silence me. They failed. Okay. That's right. They tried to demonize me. I don't think they succeeded. I think they failed. And, what's crazy is they tried to isolate me so everyone would feel demoralized about doing this work. And the opposite occurred. Yes. The opposite occurred. People saw the injustice of what was happening, and they flocked to this campaign. I mean, oh, by the way, we have a website if you want to sign up, if you haven't yet, called freedonziger.com. We're not going to change that, by the way, because I'm not fully committed. I mean, fully free, I'm sorry. I am fully committed. A little confused. I also just started a Substack, by the way, where I'm going to be an independent voice and journalist free of corporate censorship, because the New York Times continually for years has refused to cover the fact that an American lawyer is sitting and we're going to keep moving. We're going to keep raising funds, both to protect me and also so the Ecuadorian people can work with their legal team to figure out how to enforce this judgment against Chevron's assets so they can get their land cleaned up, okay? So please stay engaged. It's not over. We're moving on to a new phase. It's about going on offense and trying to make this company comply with the rule of law and pay the judgments that it owes to the people of Poison in Ecuador. Thank you so much. We're going to have some music. And this is about celebration. But look, there's more work to do. There's more work to do, no doubt. But tonight is about celebrating the fact that my detention is over. I'm so happy. Thank you so much. No more calls from the halfway house in the middle of the night. I'm not going to have to go to sleep tonight thinking I'm going to get a call at 2 or 3 in the morning to go do a check-in. I can't believe it. I got a call at 5:20 this morning, by the way, on the last day. Okay. Anyway, thank you so much. I love you all. We have a band here, Rebel Band. Here, oh, 5 minutes they're going to play. I'm so sorry.
Thanks, everybody. We are going to welcome the Rebel Band, Extinction Rebellion's official band. And we're going to have some fun because they're going to shut the streets soon, but we're going to keep being rebels and dancing until they shut it down. So have some fun. Get some Vita Coco. Thanks, Joy. Thanks, Suzanne. Thanks, everybody that helped. Jeremiah, Bianco, Matt, Xander. You're amazing. It takes a village for this kind of movement and this kind of community building. And I'm just so grateful to you all. Thank you so much. Alessio's here. He flew all the way from Czechoslovakia for this. He's an amazing activist from Europe. Get to know him.
And I went also to Ecuador. I went also to Ecuador to see the pit. Yeah, it was crazy.
I'm going again on Wednesday.
Woo. Hey folks, Jordan. That was a whole lot of people speaking. We're gonna try and speak with Steven and some others. We're gonna try to speak with Steven and others. We're also live simultaneously on Katie Halper's channel, so that's exciting. There's a whole lot of people here, and honestly, the energy is not just the energy, but there's a real spiritual feeling going on of excitement, happiness, relief, and I would also say justice. Obviously, this should have never happened, but justice that he's now finally out. So we're in a kind of tight space, so bear with me. Smash the like button, share this live stream. Again, they're going to have a band starting soon. Hold on. Anybody? Hey, we're live. Anybody want to talk about your feeling here? What?
It's just disgusting. I think money is the root of all evil. But I think the main thing that was shown here today is that even all that power that Chevron has and the big corporations have, it can't beat the human spirit.
Let me ask you, because there was a lot of folks that have been around the block, a couple older people that were speaking about decades of fighting Chevron. And as a young person, what did you kind of get from the older generation who's been fighting this for 30, not just Chevron, but the climate destruction and the corporate corruption, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, I think just that it's nothing new. And for many decades, they've been able to sweep it under the rug. And I think that this just shows that people are willing to sacrifice themselves, and they're willing to take a metaphorical bullet to take these big corporations down. And what they tried to do with Steven was they tried to make an example out of him to say, hey, look, if you stand up to us, this is what will happen to you. And a lot of people said, hey, we don't care. We're gonna step in the line, and we're gonna stand up to you guys. And that's what I saw.
What's your name?
Alexander.
Thank you, Alexander.
Thanks so
Appreciate
much.
it. Absolutely.
Sorry, I think the scariest thing is the fact that we can get in trouble for speaking up. Whether it's in the court system, it's just coming out and trying to defend people, journalists, everyone's getting in trouble. So the more we just don't care, come out and speak up and back each other up. And these sources of underground hidden media, not the corporate media, that's all just going to be paid for and sponsored.
Sing that, because YouTube's been trying to hide us for years, so I'm glad you mentioned that.
I recall, this activism isn't new, and it's just we're getting more and more people involved, and I do think there's power in people and the numbers, and now with social media, it's kind of hard to keep people quiet.
Can you talk about also, he mentioned the New York Times.
I was just going to say that.
Well, this is revered all over the world, like the paper of record, yet they intentionally buried this story when they could just walk like 20 minutes to his apartment. I mean, they seem in on kind of the cover-up here.
It's all a web. When you follow it, the source is money, is power. And whoever is at that source is going to fractal out. So no, the New York Times is not here. In fact, I recall for the Keystone Pipeline, it took about 1,220 something of us to get arrested for 2 weeks straight, for there to be a little bit of news coverage, and to try to ban that pipeline going up. The fracking movement, the non-GMOs, how much do we have to vote and say no? And yet things aren't being done our way. There is no democracy. It's just pretty obvious.
Hell, at Standing Rock, even when dogs bit protesters, they barely covered it.
No, they didn't. So I'm just thank you for being here and showing the world, what the corporate media isn't.
Absolutely. And lastly, what does it say to you? The Biden administration could have stepped in ages ago on this. Obviously, they're going after Julian Assange. They talk a lot about freedom of press, democracy. They criticize Russia, etc. But they literally, Congress people were writing letters to the Attorney General to free him. Months ago.
20 Nobel laureates wrote to free him. The UN spoke about it, and selective hearing. I believe I'm Ecuadorian. I was born in American, but I'm Ecuadorian, and I've been to the Amazon, and it's heartbreaking. I'm so glad. I really think this is gonna start a new momentum.
Right.
I know that.
And what's your name?
Belle Gonzalez.
Thank you, Belle. Appreciate it. Absolutely. Hey, Will, can I get you for a minute?
Oh, yeah, sure.
This is Will of Chapo Trap House fame. You guys, I've listened to you often. You do political comedy. Could you even like make up an act, or to think about this? Like Steven was saying.
It's a Coen Brothers comedy, you know, where everyone dies at the end, or maybe not. Maybe it's happy ending. I guess the comedy here is that the state can keep you in your apartment for 1,000 days, and then when you get out, they're like, "Hey, can I have a party?" And they're like, "Sure."
Climate activists over there.
Sorry, yeah.
The song also goes.
What does it say to you that obviously? Okay.
And everywhere else we're fighting injustice, environmental injustice.
What does it say to you that all we hear about is democracy? Russia's the boogeyman, which, I can disown what they've done, but at the same time, Biden's administration could have stepped in here. There were letters through the Attorney General from Congress people. Crickets, same thing with Assange.
Well, I mean, to echo a lot of what other guests tonight have said, when I first heard about what was going on with Steven's case, that, a lawyer was being prosecuted by a private law firm that represents the very corporation that he won a civil judgment against, that the state attorney general declined to prosecute, that a judge just appointed a private corporate law firm to prosecute an American citizen. The fact that no one was talking about it and just reading that sentence alone sent a fucking chill up my spine, because I had a very profound sense that this was a very grim vision of the future, and that if this is allowed to happen and just bit by bit people just are sort of conditioned to accept things like this happening, then we will have been removed of our Bill of Rights entirely. That there will just be there will only be law and order dictated by and for corporations only. And that's the truth about, are we a democracy or not? Well, I don't know. Look at this case,
Well, that's why I call it the United Corporations of America.
Yeah, sure.
And lastly, can you kind of talk about, obviously there was the Bernie wave of 2016, 2020, then a lot of cynicism and hopelessness, but I feel just covering the Amazon workers' victory, there's kind of an energy. I don't want to oversell it, but there's kind of a new energy among workers, among activists, not really waiting for DC, but taking things into their own hands.
Yeah, because I think the lesson of 2020 is that there's no one coming to help us. There's no one coming to help us, and I think people that can inspire extreme despair and cynicism, or it can inspire the opposite. And I think in all of us there's some mix of both, rationally and reasonably. But whether it's Starbucks, Amazon, there are very encouraging signs about people who are, or organizing to do what they expected their elected leaders or expected to be protected from. What at least I don't know, but I will say, it does feel good to occasionally experience a bit of good news or a W for the good guys.
I hear you. Thanks, man. Will Menaker, Chapo Trap House. Thank you. So before I wrap up the live stream, because we're going to do some recorded interviews, I want to remind people of something, not to take anything away from this amazing celebration with Steven. Today is important for other reasons. Today is the 8-year anniversary of the Flint water crisis, which is still a crisis. Just like the media buried what went on with Steven Donziger. Remember, the media basically descended on Flint for 2 weeks in 2016 and then left. And since then, it's basically been Status Coup, a couple others, covering one of the biggest humanitarian disasters, but also government cover-ups of this century. Ty was with me in Flint many times. I've been there almost 20 times. And there's a connection here, because this was about Chevron, a billion-dollar corporation, basically going on a corporate jihad against a human rights attorney. So that the money wasn't the biggest thing that they didn't want to pay. They didn't want to give an inch. They didn't want to open that Pandora's box. That if you actually had a justice and Chevron was made to pay for what they did in the Amazon in Ecuador, what comes next? The people would be empowered to go after other corporations, not just for environmental pollution and genocide, but a whole lot of other things. Once the people get some victories, then that's what the oligarchy is afraid of. They don't want you to get hope. They don't want you to get momentum. They don't want the spirit that you see out on this street. They don't want you to feel that. And the same thing happened in Flint, Michigan, because this was a privatization scheme. It was a privatization scheme to create a completely unnecessary new water pipeline and use the city of Flint, majority black, as guinea pigs while that new pipeline was under construction. And yeah, we'll just throw them on the Flint River. Sure, General Motors has been dumping their shit in there for a century and all sorts of, I mean, if you lived in Flint, you knew you don't fuck around with the Flint River. I mean, there have been dead bodies floating in the Flint River. And the media covered it for about 2 minutes. Rachel Maddow got accolades for doing a town hall there, and then they moved on. When I eventually write a book or we do a documentary, I could show you email after email after email of me going to major media outlets and saying, hey, I got documents from the criminal investigation showing that the governor of Michigan lied about when he first knew about a deadly bacteria going through that water. They said, is there a Trump angle? I'm not shitting you. Is there a Trump angle to this story? I said, no. This was actually under Obama, but no, this happened under Rick Snyder, the governor. They didn't want to cover it. When I actually got reporting and evidence that Snyder's top officials erased their phones before the launch of a criminal investigation. Couldn't get any outlet to cover it. Credit to The Intercept, who published it. When I got reporting that the governor's top advisor was going around to Flint residents who were sick and offering them payoffs to stay silent, fucking crickets. Only outlet I could get was Vice. Credit to Vice. When I got evidence that the prosecutors, the original Flint team of prosecutors, that they were gunning for involuntary manslaughter against Governor Snyder. Involuntary manslaughter against the governor, but they were fired by the current Attorney General. Those prosecutors were fired by the current Attorney General. When I reported that, crickets. Do you know a New York Times editor said to me via DM, maybe I'll release it one day. A New York Times editor said to me, that's a great story, but wasn't this kind of known already? A New York Times editor says to me, that's a great story that the governor of Michigan knew 16 months before he told Congress. Perjury is still a crime in America, I believe. He knew 16 months before he told Congress that there was a deadly waterborne bacteria going around killing people in Flint. And he knew 16 months earlier that he told the public. A New York Times editor told me, wasn't that already known, kind of? No, you fucking idiot. I'm bringing it to you in documents. It wasn't known. They didn't want to cover it. You want to know why? Because it had nothing to do with Trump, Russia, Stormy Daniels, or whatever other bullshit that was getting them new subscribers. Not that Trump was bullshit. Plenty of reason to cover him. But last time I checked, the New York Times got a lot more resources than Status Coup. I've lost money, not just with Status Coup, but me personally, when I put my own money to keep going back to Flint. And there's a connection between Flint, again, 8-year anniversary today, and this injustice. Because let me tell you something. Steven Donziger might technically be free, but he's not free, okay? He's been disbarred. He's been nearly bankrupted. The mental damage to sitting in an apartment and federal prison for 993 days, they took something from this man's life. The damage done to his wife and kid. And the people of Flint are not free. Because when I go there, I don't rely on the cherry-picked data that the state of Michigan puts out there, including from the Democratic governor now. I go there and I talk to the residents. They show me the rashes they're still getting from that water. They show me that their hair is still falling out when they shower. I smell the water as of 6 months ago. It smells like shit. But they say it's safe. They say it's clean. We broke a couple years ago, which, by the way, Newsweek magazine killed the story the same week it was supposed to be published. I bit my tongue. I went into the corporate headquarters of Newsweek magazine and was going to do it with them because, hey, if I can get it in a big mainstream outlet, maybe it would get around. Maybe people would care again. And they killed it that week, saying, we don't think you had enough data. I had 35 residents of Flint on the record. I knocked on doors at the time with Jen, who was with Status Coup. We knocked on 400 doors over the summer and fall. Ty shot some of it. It was hot. It was hot. And you want to know something? We found that Snyder's environmental department was going into homes and they were flushing residents' lines, their water lines, right before putting the sample bottle under, aka flushing away the lead to get artificially low levels and declare it over. And then he shut down the water pods. There's a connection between this and Steven, because people could technically be not in prison or out of house arrest, but that doesn't mean the oppression against them is done. The residents of Flint in a settlement, they're getting less than the price of a used car for brain damage to children, massive behavioral problems to children, learning disabilities to children, adults. I have friends that I have gotten close with, sources that became friends, have cancer now. I have friends that died from this water. Yeah, Tony Palladino, basically the image of Flint. 60 years old, just died of COVID. Well, let me tell you something. COVID can kill people, but if you're already badly immunocompromised with spots on your liver and your health is failing because you drank poison water, COVID will kill you a lot easier. So,
what you always say, if they let it happen in Flint, it's going to happen, and then you just look at this story.
If you normalize what happened in Flint, and that's why 8 years later I'm still screaming about this, and I'm still covering it. When it's normalized in Flint, poisoning a community, covering it up, and then leaving the community to slowly die. Because make no mistake, when we knocked on doors a couple years ago, every block we went, we'd knock on a door, somebody would open. I'd say, hey, do you know if this person that didn't open the door is, do they still live here or whatever? Oh, no, they recently died. We're talking 30-somethings, 40-somethings, 50-somethings. No history in their family of cancer. I met a woman, Amanda, in Flint. I think she was 30-something. Perfect. Her health was perfect before the water crisis. She got, they went into her home. They flushed her pipes right before taking the sample. She thought it was normal because, like, oh, well, it's the state environmental department. So I trust that they're doing it the right way. They showed her 0 lead in her house. She developed thyroid cancer, and I don't even know if she's still alive. She was pretty sick when I last interviewed her. No family history of thyroid cancer, no health problems before the water switch. We don't know how many people died there because they didn't have a registry for years. So we don't know who died of cancer, kidney failure, liver disease. They're not following it because what you don't look for, you won't find. And most importantly, on the 8-year anniversary today, not one government official, EPA, state of Michigan, Governor Snyder, local officials in Flint, not one is in prison. Not one is in prison. Hey, I'd like to interview you in a minute. Not one is in prison. Not one has even seen a jury trial. So I'm going to stay on this story. I'm going to stay on Steven Donziger's fight, too, because just because he's free physically doesn't mean he's been disbarred. He's nearly bankrupt. His reputation has been not with the activists here, but broader society has been tarnished. So we need to continue covering the fight, because to me, that's why Status Coup exists. And if you don't know, if you're new to us, subscribe. Because I was out here for the past year covering this when no one else was. Just like with the Amazon victory, I was out there a year ago at that warehouse. I was there 7 or 8 times. I'm there when it's not sexy. I'm there when it's not going viral. Okay? I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm saying it's important because whether we win, whether we lose, whatever, it's important to continue covering the fight. Not just elections, but movements. It's important to continue covering the fight because I got news for you. CNN ain't going to do it. MSNBC certainly not going to do it. The New York Times hasn't covered this for years. And frankly, there's not a lot of independent media doing it. So thank you for watching. We're going to record some interviews too that you'll be able to see on Breaking Points. Today we announced a new partnership with Breaking Points with Crystal and Sagar. So I'm excited about that. A lot of our on-the-ground reporting will be seen exclusively on their channel, which gives us a whole lot more exposure that we really, really need. So thank you for watching. If you're not yet a Status Coup member, consider signing up. statuscoup.com/join. You can become a member for $5 to $10 a month. It makes a huge difference because we got to keep the lights on. Flights, hotels, rent a car. We're going to Cleveland this weekend to cover Nina Turner's congressional election. So we'll be there days before her election. It costs money to do real journalism. Please support us. statuscoup.com/join. Peace out.